Welcome to Riding Through the Unknown. And welcome to another exciting episode of Riding Through the Unknown. I'm your host, Michael. And a little bit of housekeeping for tonight is my guest is in the track of the hurricane. So we are going to have the episode as long as signal holds out. So if he disappears, don't worry. We'll try and get him back in. And if we can't, we'll just make it a part 2 episode and bring him back for that. But we do ask that everyone keep him in their prayers and send positive energy their way and to all of those in the track of the hurricane. And our heart does go out to all of those who are affected by the previous hurricane, and hoping this one does not slam them again and so be like a double whammy. So prayers of protection and everything to everyone in the track of that storm. And without further ado, and hoping tonight goes as we're wanting it to go, I give you the one, the amazing Matthew Mournian.
Thank you. Thank you for having me very sincerely. As a person who was kind of lurking your show for a while because you had such a cool title, it's an honor to be here. And so anyway, thank you. And yeah.
Well, thank you. And, feel free to lurk away. And I know that sounds really strange.
Oh, I know, right? Well, you're definitely in the right place for that if you're talking to me. So anyway.
So for those who may not be familiar, can you give the audience a little bit about who you are and what you do? And if you want to mention your wife, you can.
Totally. Yeah, so I guess this is always the funnest part every time I do one of these, to put a label on the thing that I do. And it sounds dumb and kind of cheesy at the same time, but I regularly ask myself, like, what is it that I actually do? Because it takes so many different forms. But I would say, if you want to put a label or a title on it, at this stage of the human journey, I am about 8 years deep into a cycle of operating and living in my sole purpose on this earth plane as a professional psychic, and what some people would call an energetic healer, energetic practitioner. There's a million, new age, terms that you can add to it. But I essentially work with non-physical energy, the energy of the body, the energy of our life force, and also a number of spiritual, frequencies, beings, extraterrestrials. We do a lot of clearing work. We do a lot of readings. And honestly, it's one of those things where every year it changes and it just keeps going and going. And anyway, I never knew this was what I was going to do in this life. And so, yeah, that's pretty much how it is.
Well, and it appears that you have quite a following, and one of your fans says, read his book.
Oh, are we still there? Yeah. Okay, good.
Yeah.
Sorry,
Okay, yes.
I had a huge power surge, but yeah, I'll just mention that really quickly. I did come out with my first book on June 22nd of this year. It's called Remember Your Mission. What if you're, or maybe you're not crazy, maybe you're psychic, and it is out on Amazon. Anybody can pick it up. I am very grateful that people are actually buying it. I'm not, you know what I mean? I'm not one of those people, that everybody's, banging down my door from all over the world, but we've had a very, very consistent turnout. So I'm grateful for everyone out there that has found it. And yeah, it's really the story of how I started in this, but yeah.
Yeah. Heidi Pop says, wonderful book.
Thank you, Heidi. Good to see you.
Yeah, and I have to say, I find it kind of interesting when I was recommended to have you as a guest. And so when I sent you the friend request, and I was surprised when you accepted because I was like, we don't know each other. And I was like, wow, this is really cool. Maybe I can get him on the show. And so I've been waiting to have you on, and it finally worked out and happens
Oh,
to be during hurricane. So go figure.
yeah. It feels oddly fitting though, but yeah,
It
thank you.
does.
I appreciate it.
But it also, I was surprised how many people we actually knew. And I was like, wow, I'm always surprised when it's like, how has our paths never crossed when we know the same people and you go to some of these events and it's like, how have we never actually met? It's so weird.
I've noticed that's been happening a lot more lately. It's like you'll be running on a parallel timeline with a number of people, and it's like, you will sometimes be aware of them, or there'll be this kind of, like resonance that you'll see with people. And it's almost like faces, like driving by on the freeway where you're like, oh, there's so and so, or there's so and so. And then eventually, you end up parking in the same place, and boom, here we are. But I had a strange feeling. I've just noticed all year long has been a strange synchronistic series of encounters with people where I'm like, wow, somehow we were totally like connected in this odd way without like realizing it. So it seems to be kind of a theme, for the moment. But yeah.
I agree. It's been that kind of year for me too, is oddly a lot of things coming on, and it's like, and certain guests that I'm like, I still like with you and a few others that I had on. I was like, I look and I'm like, I can't really believe it's like I got to pinch myself because I'm
Oh,
like,
that's
they're
cool.
on my show. Wow.
Thank you. You're definitely like making it work though. So I pray that you keep it up. Really. I mean, yeah.
Well, thank you. And I'm always trying to bring on topics because I know sometimes it gets a little heavy and the same topic over and over, even though people's experiences are different. And so I try to mix it up some and be like, yeah, let's not do all this one topic and be like, okay, I'm glad y'all
I
were
feel
here
you.
to on for the ride.
Yeah. I feel you.
Yeah. So what got you started on your 8-year journey?
That's a very good question. I always say this, so it's been said so many times, people will cringe. Somebody out there who's heard me like, oh God, here he goes. Like I said, I had no idea that I was gonna do this work in this life. It took me until about age 40 until I realized that there was something very, maybe not so different, but just very, very particular about the way I was perceiving things in this world. And I think like a lot of us, I was born in a certain frequency and a certain kind of wavelength that lent itself to extreme empathic overload very, very early on. And I think for me, the experiences of early childhood, while it wasn't, this horrible traumatic thing, I mean, there was a significant amount of it, but it wasn't a thing that defined me. But what I came away with it was that I had come into this world with a very, very particular path that, just like I think maybe you and I were speaking of just prior to this show, it defied so much of what everyone had expected of me. And I really tried to fit myself into the box of kind of normal kind of human life paths for literally 40 years. I tried everything I could do. I was a musician for a long time, and it kind of worked. I played in bands for a number of years. It went reasonably well, but they were all stages of identity that never really fit. And right around when I turned 40, a very particular event occurred in my life that literally changed everything for me. And I talk about it in the book. I've told the story a million times. I'll give you the super short version of it here. I used to work as a mental health, we'll call it mental health professional in, homeless outreach and stuff back in, 2015. And I had an experience at a homeless outreach fair at a veterans treatment center that I was working at, wherein I essentially had a massive opening of Kundalini energy in my body. I was given an energy blessing by a very kind person, just people in public doing energy work. And I really only sat down with them because it was hot and I wanted water and they had shade and they were like, would you like an energy blessing? Some old lady like, hello. And I was like, yeah, all right. Yeah, sure. Yeah, whatever. And I sat there and it sounds crazy, but within, maybe 30 seconds, maybe 2 minutes, I don't know how long it was. I stood up and it was as if something opened up at the top of my head and I could feel my breath moving through the top of my head. And it felt like I was wearing a hat, like there was this ring right here, but it was like there was nothing there. And I remember just walking around with it for a while and telling people. And I remember looking out at the world, and as soon as I met with that woman, it was like all of a sudden some wavelength opened up in my eyes, and it was like light got really bright, yet I could see all these little things moving and sort of connecting in the atmosphere, and I described them like sparks of light. And it was so powerful that I was able to stare into the sky and watch all these things moving and cascading and going back and forth. And it was one of those moments where I was like, something just happened to me. And I didn't know what it was. Lo and behold, long story short, within about 30 to 60 days of that moment in July of 2015, I experienced such a massive opening of energy within my body that I began to literally fall out of my physical body. The things would occur. I would walk past people. I would get caught in their energy field. And I did not know it was a thing that was possible at the time, but it was like I would actually fall. It was like something had ripped open within my energy field so greatly I could not contain it. And I started coming through portals when I would wake up in the morning, just like watching myself go through my ceiling, fully conscious, going, what the hell's going on? I'm crazy. I'm losing my mind, because I was working in mental health at the time, right? You know what I mean? It was like, this doesn't happen, and then beings started showing up. And then about, I would say, a month into it, and this is always the thing that a lot of people ridicule me for saying this, because they will think it's fake, but I need to talk about this because people need to know this happens. About a month into that journey, I remember being in the shower and so much energy was going through my body. I started doing this autistic glitch out thing, and I was like, just literally, I felt like my body was frying. And in the palm of my left hand came a blue wisp of flame, like an actual fire. A fire came out of my hand. And it was one of those moments where you would imagine if a thing like that happened to you, you'd be like, oh my God, that's amazing, right? Most people would be like, it's a superpower, right? For me, it was the single most frightening thing that had ever occurred. Moreover, it gave me a sense of fear that literally it just shut it down and it never came back. And so those moments were like turning points for me. And what happened was I ended up discovering, going back to the woman that helped me with that, that activation, and they explained what had happened. You're having a Kundalini awakening, your energy body has opened up, and they were like, good job. And I was like, what the fuck's going on? Yeah, I was losing my mind. And so I had to go through a 2-year journey of literally learning how to put myself back in my body, learning how to control and understand what was happening. What was happening for me was that something had ripped open so far that I was able to instantly perceive what we call the layers of energetic anatomy. And I could see meridians. I could see chakras. Actually, I could hear the chakras first. The first thing was that I could hear it somehow. I didn't understand how that was possible. But it was not the cool version of it. I didn't get like a victorious awakening. I thought I was literally insane, and I was a cowering, just complete mess for 2 years straight, until a few people came into my life, and one person in particular, and honestly, the first time I met her, she looked at me and said, "You're a psychic." "Yes, you are. Yes, you are. That's why you're so weird." And I was like, it was like this moment where I was like, somebody saw something within me that fundamentally changed my entire life. And that was in summer of 2017. And ever since that day, I have lived and operated in a full professional capacity in doing the work that I do. I never took a class. I never read a book on it. I never got trained by anyone. I lived with this, woman who was older than me for about a couple months. And she just talked to me about her job being a psychic. She just told me, "Oh yeah, this is how you do it. This is what I do." And boom, here we are 8 years later. And now we're teaching people how to do this very thing that we do. And so that's kind of how it started for me. I will stop there. But
No,
yeah.
that's cool. And one of the things that caught my attention that I was like, when I heard you say it, kind of resonated to me, that something that came up like either, I think it was last year for me, was a friend of mine created a banner because being in the paranormal field, we all gather and she put us together in a group and she's like, "This tribe, these weirdos are my tribe." And we're like, "Oh, we loved
Yeah,
that." And
yeah.
so when you said, "Yes, that's why you're so weird," and you're like, "Yes," and accepting that, I was like, "Yes, that seems to be like the biggest compliment to give to people in our
Sort
frame
of
of
is.
reference." And it's
Yeah.
like, I know that they're like sitting there going, "Oh, you're weird." And we're hearing, "Oh, you're weird." Yes, I've
Yeah.
made
Yeah.
it. I'm on
Mhm.
this level.
That's very much, very, very, very much how it was. Yeah. Totally.
Yeah, so I'm kind of a little bit curious with, so you spoke at a conference in July. Do you want to talk a
Oh
little
yeah,
bit about
absolutely. Yeah,
that?
yeah, totally. The Full Disclosure Now conference put on by Mr. Brian Singh. And yeah, that I haven't been doing a lot of events. I one thing I learned over the past 3 years was that I was not a chosen member of the SSP Cool Kids Club. So you know what I mean? I got to be on the outer fringes, you know what I mean? And so, my opportunities to speak are few and far between, but we did have a really good presentation over there, and really like the overall mission right now, which I'll just cut to the chase. Like, I have a very particular assignment on the earth plane, at least at this stage right now, and that is to prove and to demonstrate to those that find the work that I do and that are able to hear my voice, whether now in the future, that you are living in a time on earth in which you have a very, very particular set of skills and a very particular duty and opportunity to be of service to the human collective in a manner and in a form that most of us have waited lifetimes to have. And so part of my duty right now is helping people understand that you yourself are also a psychic. We are also healers. And I think that one of the things that I want to stress to our soul group or our community is that we're coming to the stage in which the greatest growth and the greatest change, the greatest healing you will ever encounter in this life will come at your own hands through the work that you learn how to do, through your own discernment, through the development of your abilities, and through the God-given ability to commune with spirit in the ways that we were taught were only available to those in power, those that were in charge, those that were, the head of the churches. We're living in a time in which everyone can do it. And I would like to think that that's mainly the message that I like to send at these events. Whether or not that gets sent is a whole other matter. But we also talked a lot about a lot of extraterrestrial experiences that I've had, which I think was one of the things that really kind of drew me in to that soul group of people, was trying to understand my own journey within it and really what had happened to me. And what I discovered in that, which is a thing that we had talked about at the conference, and it was actually the first time I had discussed this publicly, was that I had been a part of a family wherein my maternal grandfather had worked at the Los Alamos National Laboratories in the 1970s. And everyone's heard about what kind of stuff might have been going on out there in New Mexico. The awkward news is he was not involved, or so he claimed, in any sort of, space stuff. He was actually working, check this out, supposedly he was working on a space age glue that they were going to use to put together top secret aircraft, because they couldn't be riveted. They had to be glued by some crazy superpower adhesive. And so for some reason, this guy would have to go out to, New Mexico and stay there for 10 days in a row and work on this glue. And during that series of experiences during that stage, he had a series of experiences, which were abductions, military abductions, meetings with grays, and a series of beings. And what I came to understand, and it usually skips a generation. So my parents' generation didn't necessarily have the same type of interaction. Yet what I've discovered is that it's been a thing going on in my family, and probably most of the people that hear my voice as families. But in my specific case, it seems as though something kind of followed me from that experience. And as an early child, I had this was one of the things that I had never really spoken of until this conference. I had been taken out of the body and taken to other, if you want to call them planets or places in space, or we can even call them other realms. And I think a big part of my journey was understanding, what that is and how that worked. And so I think I come from like an ancestral, like, bloodline of contactees. But what I've noticed is, for me, and I'll kind of pause after this, it has taken a very different form from what a lot of other people have experienced. And I think at the beginning of the journey, it really caused me to doubt myself, because the experiences that I was having were more real than anything I had ever encountered in this entire life. And it was weird. They didn't seem to fit in with what other people were saying. There was no programs, and there was no, this or that. And, there was just such a different encounter. And so anyway, I will pause there. But yeah, it was a very strange road starting out.
Well, what's interesting is you're talking about going out of body and meeting these other beings and potentially other worlds. And I love how the universe has synchronicity, because my guest last night on my paranormal show was all about the astral. How do you
Yeah.
astral? And hearing your story, I'm like, do you feel like you were, on the astral and doing this all astral? Or do you feel like, no, this was actually really here and in a different way?
That's a good question. What I have discerned is that the childhood experiences that I had, I think one in particular, which was one that I had written about in the book, in my opinion, and this is an opinion, because
Up, I think we get a power surge.
oh, are we still there? Hopefully,
Okay, here we go.
it was a good sign. What was the last thing you heard before it cut out?
You were stressing how it's your opinion.
Oh, right. In my opinion, I believe that the experiences I had in early childhood, at least one of them that I had written about in the book, was an actual physical. It was a physical departure from this physical plane. There was a blue light that used to come into my room at that stage of the journey, and as a child, I thought it was completely normal. It was just a thing that would come in, and it would come right up to the tip of my nose, this little blue orb, and then I would just wake up in the morning. It was never a negative thing. I would wake up and, oh, there's the blue light. I'm going to sleep. And then one night in particular, the blue light came and I didn't go to sleep. And all of a sudden, I found myself inside what looked kind of like a boat, but it was also kind of like a weird metal thing. It was like this holding container, and there was these seats strapped on each side, and I was physically in the seat, and I could see the people across from me. And across from me was like an older woman, and she was dressed. She had like a kind of a robe on, and next to her was a little girl, and the little girl was kind of putting her head against her, and she was sort of passed out. And there was other people sitting next to me, and we were strapped into these chairs into the side of this, what I would believe to be a craft. And I believe that that was a physical encounter. What ended up occurring in that particular one, it's a very long story, but what I believe happened was I was taken to some other place, an actual physical, if you want to call it, installment. I know it's such a woo-woo thing, a base, if you want to use that term. And I was actually forced to watch, this is going to sound crazy, a presentation. It was a literal presentation and a speech given by a series of people that came in and showed all these figures and percentages. And in the middle of that speech, I was watching this old guy came in, he looked kind of military. And then there was another woman that came in after that. And who came in with the woman was these very, very tall men. They were like from the child mind, age 6, are like basketball players, you know what I mean? Like
Right.
really, really tall, skinny dudes came in and they sat down right in the front of this amphitheater. And as this weird meeting ended, we were kind of ushered out in these lines. I'm skipping through so much of this story, but we were ushered out in this place. I remember walking. I remember I could see the walls. I could see these like flags that had been draped along the walls and stuff. It was a trip. And as I walked toward this thing that looked like a metal detector, I saw those really, really tall men, and their hands were so long that it was like their fingers were like branches, and in the tips of their fingers they were holding these little teeny cups of water, like these little teeny cups of water. And as we walked through, they gave a little cup of water to each person. And I remember taking this cup of water as a kid and drinking it, and boom, I woke up in my bed and I was in a state of absolute utter terror, like anything I had ever experienced in my life up to that point. I was inconsolable. I was trembling, shaking, crying. My entire family awoke. They were trying to hold me down on the bed because I was like, I could remember every second of it. And they didn't know what was wrong. I didn't know what was wrong. And we never spoke of it again. After that night. And so to me, that was a physical abduction. Now, in the years after that, I had many other experiences, especially after what we would call, a quote unquote awakening stage. And I mean, face to face with certain beings, in which I actually had made physical contact with a reptilian that had visited me at one point. Like actually touched it. And I believe those experiences were in a fourth density astral state, meaning that I was outside of my physical body, yet in a fourth density state in which there are still the senses. In fact, the senses are much more alive when we do step into what many people call the astral, which is, I would say, kind of another term for what I call the fourth density shared space, in which all thoughts, all data, all actions, each and every one of us, yourself included, me, all of us are encountering each other in that space on a nightly basis when we go into the dream state. I would say a lot of dreams will also be, astral experiences, but it is a thing that can be cultivated, it is a thing that can be taught, it is a thing that can be learned, and you can venture into that space on a daily basis. I think for a lot of the work that I do with clients and people, that is where we go to extract the data of what is happening with people outside of their body on their timelines. And then on the same time, we also look very deeply within the inner reaches of the body and understand what's going on with them internally. But I would say for me, it's been a mix. There was some real physical stuff and mostly astral now. So I probably over answered that.
Oh no, you're doing perfectly fine. And one of the questions that came up in last night's show, and I'm curious your opinion of, is we look at the astral plane and how, like, if you have psionics, your psionics are visible, you can use them, they're there, you're using them, you can access all these different things. Could you say the astral is the quote real world, and what we're living in is like a matrix world where we're in like meat suits going through the day of what they programmed us to do? And so when you tap in the astral, you're really tapping into the real self, and you come back and then you just reintegrate back into the 3D version of yourself, the
I
matrix
feel
version.
Do I believe the astral is what we would call the maybe base reality, the most common inhabited place for souls? That's I have heard that, and in some ways, I feel that that is very resonant in terms of this is what we understand as maybe true reality outside of what we would call this biodigital intelligent, matrix that we're living in. And yet at the same time, I think, maybe this is too much of a philosophical answer, but I really believe that our task as human beings is here on earth. At least mine is, here on earth to create change within the physical body. You know what I mean? And so for me, while I do regard what we might call the other realms, that astral space, as a very legitimate and real form of reality, and honestly, it's a place that I work with literally every day in the work that I do. I'm not good at taking breaks. So it's like I see pretty much about one person every day at least and do this work. But it's a place that I think when you begin working in a regular capacity and doing regular psychic work with people, you will become naturally very comfortable with sort of extending pieces of your consciousness outside of this body. And I think what you'll find is that, I mean, it's one of those things that as soon as we can break through these layers within the infrastructure of our chakras, and there's literal mind layers that you have to break through. It's one of the reasons why a lot of people have a hard time actually moving into that astral state outside of what they think they're making up, is because you actually have an imagination layer within the third eye. You have a physical layer within the third eye. You have a bunch of different gateways. In fact, if you want to get technical, the third eye itself is what we might call the primary visual sensing apparatus for spiritual energy. It's actually, from what I can tell, 5 or 6, possibly more, separate pieces of one focusing lens. And now one of those has to do with what we would call our realm and sort of empathic feelings and the vibrations that we pick up with people. And then the other facets of this lens have to do with elemental energies, which from my understanding of what I've been able to observe, is maybe one of the reasons why there seems to be, for most people, about 4 to 5 different little kind of offshoots or appendages or little kind of focusing dots around the third eye, and they sort of activate as we go through the journey. But as we get more into that elemental activation, you'll find people start drifting outside of the body kind of naturally. And here's the thing, it's not always like the best thing to do. I think that one of the things I noticed from people over the years past was that there was a big, it was like a trend for a while to try to, do an out of body experience. And while it is very expansive, it also leads to a lot of states of dissociation. And there's kind of a lot of grounding that you have to go through with it as well. And so anyway, to go back to your question, yes, I think it is a form of true reality. But like it or not, I think the reality that I'm born to connect with is here in 3D, at least for now, on the reality plane. So yeah.
So yeah, and funny story for you is, as you're talking about, needing to be here and not on the astral and working there, is when I was, I think, in my teenage years or maybe 20s, I was spending so much time in the astral that they actually took and locked the door on me
Mhm.
and said, "You are not allowed in the astral. We are taking away your access. You have to stay here on this plane." And I was like, "That's not fair." They're like, "No, you belong here. You need to be here." And so it took me like couple months maybe before they would allow me back into the astral, but it was so strange not having that access. And so yeah, so it's kind of funny how both of us are like, yeah, we're stuck here.
That is very, very, that's a very, very real thing. And I guess I'll just be real with you, and hopefully this isn't, TMI. I can tell you are very, very active in that framework of reality. I mean, it's very apparent. You can feel it in people's energy. I can see it in your eyes. I can see the way you observe people, both internally and externally. I mean that very, very sincerely. And so I doubt you're still cut off from there. I don't think you are. But
No.
yeah.
No, but thank you for that. That is great validation
Yeah,
because
it's real.
there are times where you wonder, is this memory or is this experience real or what's going on? And so one thing I want to kind of diverge to a topic that may be in your wheelhouse, maybe not.
Yeah, yeah.
And I'm curious with your work is why I'm going to ask it is the ego. I've come to learn it as being an earth guide only, meaning it'll only aid you and help you here on earth. It won't help you out there or in the astral. And so to me, that's where I'm like more comfortable with when people say, well, you're being egoic. I'm like, well, yeah, I'm on the earth. So good. I'm guiding
Yeah.
people on the earth. Where, what's your take on the role of the ego?
Man, I feel quite resonant with the way you describe it as being somewhat of an earth-based construct, at least when it comes to the intensity through which we would interact with it. I feel that part of at least the ego's role, at least in my life, is to continue to teach me about who and what I am, and the boundaries through which I chose to interact, and the way, all of the ins and outs of the human experience. And so it stands to reason that, to me, that would be much more of a earth-based, character trait that we're going to allow into our consciousness for purposes of self-regulation, preservation, whatever terms you want to add to it. That makes sense. I think, it's an integral part of third density human consciousness. Now, when we leave this body, is the question, does the ego persist? Does it still hold some form of weight or relevance, or hold on to those personality aspects that we prize so greatly on earth? You know what I mean? It's like, does it? That's a very good question. And I don't know that I could really answer that. I can tell you that within the experiences that I have had, within what we would call an astral or non-physical space, it doesn't seem to be the type of place where there is a lot of ego flexing, or one is defined upon, the power through which they're, defined in the earth plane. You know what I mean? It's not even a thought. And I think one of the things that I have learned, and also was taught to me about the nature of what we would call that fourth density state of consciousness, is that I think that there may be some form of an automatic ego dissolution when you enter that framework, because one of the things we know about fourth density consciousness is that everything is known, all is apparent, every thought, every desire, every action, every history of every individual is all known. There is nothing that is inaccessible within fourth density, except when we're within that framework, those facets are only valuable to us in 3D. We only look at them here in third density and go, whoa, you mean I have all knowledge and I know what's going on, and I can sense, the thought forms of other people and interact through the fabric of time? And you're like, oh my God. And then you get in there and it's like, well, yeah, that's how it is for everyone. Only in
Right.
3D are you bound to cause and effect. Well, I shouldn't say cause and effect. Only in 3D are you bound to the passage of time that we experience. And so, anyway, I'm grossly over answering you once again. I think it plays a role, but truthfully, I might not understand to what end. So, there
Well,
you go.
and what's interesting is to piggyback on what you were saying about it when you're in the 4D or the astral or however you want to determine it. I noticed when I would spend time out there and when I come back, the way I was perceiving things before changes. And I
Mhm.
know, people say, oh, that's spiritual growth. You're learning this or that. But what I'm meaning is like, say, for example, being an athlete, we'll use an athlete example. Your ego is, yeah, I'm the top player, I'm the best of the best. Then you go spend time in the astral, and when you come back, you're like, I'm no different than anybody else, and we're a team, and your whole persona changes. And I feel like that's, I think, kind of a residue of the energy of the astral coming in, and the ego is like, oh, wait a minute, melding with it and going, okay, now this is my new level, my new role.
Yeah.
So my new understanding. And so I think it does grow with us
I agree.
because we do need to still operate here because this is like apparently our station home.
Oh,
And
definitely.
so
Yeah.
until we fully move on to ascend to the next dimension, I think the ego is along for the ride. And I think to me, what happens is if you embrace what you've learned out there and bring it back, the ego learns it with it. But if you don't like truly learn and you think you've learned, but you haven't really, then the ego fights it and says, nope, we're still going to have the persona of we're number one, we're the best. And you miss the growth.
Yeah, I can agree with that. Yeah. Which I guess is a very valuable tool in the third density realm. You know what I mean? Like, it's a very, very valuable tool for learning, but I feel you.
Right. And I will admit, I was taught and used to be of the school of the way to ascend is you destroy and let go of the ego. And I've come to actually learn now, like you're saying, I'm 46 now. That's like in my
Yeah.
40s
We're the
going,
same age. Nice. 77, right? Yeah.
yeah, 78
Mhm.
actually.
Oh, okay. Yeah, yeah. There you go. 78.
So,
Yeah.
but yeah, and it's funny that it's like my late 30s, I would say more in the 40s, that I've truly come to understand that the ego is not something to be destroyed. It's
Yeah.
something to teach. And so I've almost wondered if the ego is like a construct of the inner child.
Whoa. Actually, I can see that. I think that yes, there's a lot of it, a tremendous amount of it. Yeah, interesting.
Yeah.
Wanting to be held and seen and acknowledged and be powerful, and you know what I mean, the many aspects of us that we seek to be recognized as. Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah. And that hunger to learn and being like, you know, we're supposed to grow and this is how we grow. And it's like, but that was how I knew to grow back then. And this is where I know now. And it's like, yeah, it's like you're taking the child and going, okay, we're going to age you a little bit. Here's the new wisdom.
Mhm. Yeah, it really does change you though, continuing to kind of venture into those places to kind of open up, the crown and move out of the body. It really does. It changes how we perceive reality. It changes how we understand ourselves. I think it opens us up to, I think, experiences that a lot of people on the earth plane obviously still don't even believe to be real. You know what I mean? That's kind of
Right.
why I have put such a heavy emphasis on it at times, with the clients that I work with. And in every energy clearing we do, it's very much like a meditation in which we're sort of pulling our viewpoint out of this body into the many possibilities and the timelines that are around us. And in many cases, I would say even more cases, we're actually going into the body, like outside of our right now here in front of your face framework, and into the universe within us. And honestly, it changes you. It really, really does. It sounds crazy, but I think some of the most powerful gateways to create extraterrestrial contact or higher dimensional contact comes through the gateways that are within the human body rather than what we can perceive and extend outside of it. You know what I mean? Like the portal, like the heart portal itself is a gateway to fourth density. When they talk about the Christ consciousness and the expanded wavelength of our consciousness as humans, that's in many ways kind of what we're evolving into. And all is known, all is present. And anyway, I could go on and on about it, so I'll
No,
pause
but
there, but you know what I mean.
yeah, and what's interesting is you actually just triggered a thought and a new idea in my mind, and I'm curious your thoughts on it. Is talking about the heart portal. That's a portal within us, and there are scientists and people of the science field who say there's a black hole within us, and we're a universe within ourselves. But
Mhm.
where I'm going with this is we need sunlight, the vitamin D from the sunlight, to help us with our skin, our abilities, everything about us really needs the sun. And the sun, they're starting to find out, is a portal.
Oh yeah.
And
Oh,
so, is it the energy of the sun that we're needing, or is it the portal, being open to the portal, that is what's helping us grow and remember things?
whoa. My immediate impression, what I feel upon hearing that question, is that it is both, hand in hand in some way. And I guess I'll just kind of insert a weird story there, but in 2016, I actually had an out of body experience with a mantis being, some form of this praying mantis type extraterrestrial, and it happened to me in a group meditation in which we were doing this breathing exercise, all kind of Kundalini yoga ish, breath of fire type thing, and they take you through the chakras and you would move through each one. In fact, if you want to try it, you can look it up on YouTube. It's called Ananda Mandala. You can just write those words on YouTube, Ananda Mandala meditation. Anyone can do it. Lots of breathing. But I had an experience in which, in one of a group meditation in which we were doing that, I actually came face to face with a mantis being that appeared to my left. And at that time, it's funny because you talked earlier about getting kind of, kicked out of the astral for a while so you could do self work. At the time when I had that experience with that being, I remember as soon as I was able to perceive him, and this is a thing that happens a lot of times when you encounter a real multidimensional consciousness. There's this thing that happens in your brain and within your body where it's like everything turns on at the same time, and it's like there's a million questions and a million things shooting out of you, and it's almost like this unintelligible burst of energy that was very, very hard to control. And I still don't know how to do it. I don't know if anyone does. But in that moment, I was asking, who are you? What is this? What is this? And it's funny because he looked at me and it was like, you're not ready. It was like telling me, you are not ready for this. And when I kept going, what am I not ready for? He showed me the portal within the sun and how I entered this realm. And it was actually as a point of light that came through the surface of the sun, and it kind of extended out into space, and it broke off into all these pieces. And what I was shown in that moment was the seeding process of how many of us came to enter this earth realm, and that it was actually through the sun. And granted, that was in 2016. I had no conscious idea that was real. You know what I mean? I was like, what? I didn't even know that was a thing. So it was actually only a year later, someone else mentioned it, and I was like, you know what I mean? It really helped me figure out that was actually whoa. We might lose power in a second. We are in major hurricane zone, but yeah. So
Yeah. Well, we actually have a comment from J. Kelly Silver, and she says that happened to my daughter. They locked her out of the place where our music originated because she didn't want to leave.
I could see that. You know what's funny?
Yeah.
I've also heard of people finding music out there within an astral. I've heard of a number of clients come to me and they're like, I can find this place. I will sort of check out of my body. I will go into this realm and there's some kind of music and they'll try to follow the music. And that is a common thing. I would say give it a little bit of time and spirit will show you in your heart and your mind when you're ready to venture back into that space. And just know, just in that little fragment of what you said in your comment, that's a real thing. And it's very, very common. So, but yeah, they will. Sometimes they'll kick you out. That happened to me the first time I did DMT, which, for some people I recommend it, others I don't. But for those that don't know, it's a psychedelic that will literally shoot you into other realms. And I actually did. I shot into some other realm, and I sat at a table with these beings, and they were like, it was just like, you don't belong here. No, you're not ready. Don't come here. And it was like they actually forced me to drink something. They handed me this sort of vase and they put it up to my lips and were like, giving it to me. And I was like, and then I just went right back into my body. And it was like, what? And I think for a lot of us, we will have experiences like that in this life. And we will immediately go, well, there's no way that was real. And I encourage everyone out there to really lean into it. I'm not saying, decide that it's absolute reality, but those things don't happen by mistake. And, um, you know, it's definitely going to become much more regular as we go along. But I'll pause there. I feel myself in ranting mode. So,
Oh, you're doing fine. And I actually had a guest who, when I was explaining an event in the paranormal field that happened to me, she actually addressed it and was like, she goes, so according to science, because that's her background, is I think is parapsychology. She goes, when you're in an event and all your senses are firing and are present in that event, you are physically in that event.
that makes sense.
And I was like, and I said, so that's time travel? She goes, yeah, you went back into the past. For me, my experience was Vicksburg battlefield, and all my senses were firing. And I'm thinking this is a past life memory. So I'm watching a movie playing out and all engaged on it. And she goes, no, you were actually
Mhm.
there. And I was like, oh, that becomes even more trippy. And so I'm wondering if that's kind of fits your definition of, how to determine real life experiences from astral is if all your senses are present, you're having a real experience, or does that still get a little muddied?
That makes sense. To me, that feels resonant in that if every aspect of your physical senses are operational, that would signal a greater level of, formation of reality in some way. I feel resonant with that, yet at the same time, and maybe this is just one of those like, but wait a minute, there's also, um, who said that the astral is not physically real? At what point did we get taught that that's not real and that only 3D is real? You know what I mean? It's like kind of
Right.
a sort of a double-edged thing. And um anyway, I'm not sure where I'm going with that. I'm getting sidetracked by this. I don't know if you can hear the wind. It's going crazy now. I think I heard a
Actually,
literal
no.
piece of metal flying by outside. You'll see me go, what? Damn. Anyway, but yeah, we're still hanging in there. So
It's kind of funny because they talk about the eye of the storm all the time, and it's like here, and you were like, okay, we're in the eye, and so it's like literally getting to be like a live experience of this is what it's like, and being like, wow. And but I'm curious with I'm not sure if you know a lot of metaphysical terms and sciencey terms, but the astral plane, I hear people also talk about the ethereal and and all these other names, the ethers, and are they all names for the same place, or are these different planes built up on each other?
man, that's a very good question. I have also heard, of, ethereal, ether, all those things. Um, I sort of feel like it really depends on not I'm not trying to make this like a humorous thing, but I think your definition of those places and those terms will be dependent on who you follow and what you've learned. And whose YouTube channels you watch and what you've been taught and understand as being real. And so to one person, it could be an entirely separate realm or, a level of, some other astral place. And for other people, we're all just describing one thing. I can tell you that whichever way you want to describe it or look at it, from what I have observed on a firsthand level, it's funny because I always use this stupid word. There are a myriad of levels of what we might call realms, pocket dimensions that I think are accessible to really anyone who chooses to devote themselves to opening up the energy body. Some of them are very, very well formed. And when you get used to really kind of silencing the mind, you can go into a state that feels more real than real. And some of them are more like shared dream realms where we bounce off each other and have weird fantasies. And it's more just like an echo chamber. And I see all of those things as equally real in some way. The relevance that they hold for those on third density plane, I think, is where it varies. You know what I mean? And so, maybe it's all real. Maybe they're all separate levels. Another thing you'll find, which, I don't know if it's a cool thing to say this, or maybe it's a bad thing, but I have also had probably too much time being able to view what we would call the lower astral plane as well. And I can tell you that there are so many, like infinite layers to that, which, that's neither here nor there, but some of them are almost identical to this earth plane. Some of them have very strange conditions. Some of them become entirely different levels of reality that we bounce in and out of here in this human life. It's a very, very, it's so dense, it's so expansive, it's really hard to put your finger on it all. But anyway, it's a wild realm out there, and I think they're all kind of real in their own way. I guess that's where I'm going with that.
So here's an interesting thought for you is we're starting to hear like a lot of talk about like Mandela effects kicking up because timelines are merging and we're returning to one solid timeline that somebody's splintered off in the past. And so if that's true, are these timelines that we're looking at, could they be astral timelines? Like existence on the astral that's coming into current, or are they actually really alternate timelines where we're all like we could be having this conversation in 10 different parallel universes and maybe talking about the same thing and maybe talking about something totally different?
I feel you. From my understanding and what I have observed, and this is always a haphazard thing to say, because, if you haven't noticed, everyone's an expert, instantly nowadays. All it takes is a YouTube channel. It's like, now I know all about this, but sorry. We're getting some real, I'm sorry. Can you please refresh my train of thought? Some big piece of debris just flew past my window. I'm like, wow. Where was I going with that? I'm sorry.
We were discussing if the timelines that are merging.
Oh, right. Okay. Sorry. Thank you. That was just like a what the hell moment. What I have observed is it is literally infinite. And I've heard a lot of people say, no, there's 2 or 3, physical timelines, and there's a chaos timeline, and there's this and that. And, maybe I'm wrong. I always leave room for that because I think everyone that does this work, I think one of the most dangerous things anyone can do as a professional mystic is to, fall under the delusion that your own version of reality is the same for every single person. It is absolutely not. And it's literally possible that you're going to be standing next to a person or even on a screen with somebody like this, and both you and I could potentially be on completely different versions of reality. One thing we do know is that they will intersect in moments, maybe just like this, in other moments. And so whether those are all real, whether there's an infinite amount of them, or we're sort of confined between a number, I think that we're kind of still deciding, at least as a collective. We'll kind of bring it to the here and now in what we would call, maybe we'll even bring it to the US here right now in this timeline. I think we as a collective are doing a lot more work in terms of deciding what we want to see for the future versus what I think the majority of people are doing individually. Yet at the same time, there is a lot of people, probably like yourself and myself, a lot of the people that will watch your show within our soul group, who are also interacting in a very, very deliberate way, whether they know it or not, in their own timelines, and sort of merging them and collapsing them. And I think that is kind of one of the facets of existence that we go through right as we prepare to have a big dimensional shift, which is what we're literally living in right now. And timelines will collapse, old versions of us, pieces of reality, whoa, aspects of self, you know what I mean? And so they're going to be intersecting in a number of ways. And anyway, I'm probably just ranting at you now, but
Oh no, you're doing
that's how I
totally
see it.
fine. And and I gotta admit, I'm kind of impressed holding train of thought when you got metal
It's a
flying
little,
by and going.
I'm thinking maybe it was a big chunk of a tree, but it was like you could hear it go all the way across the side of the building. And so what's funny is earlier I did a live on YouTube and I was like, yeah, I don't know, it's pretty mild, it's not too bad. We're getting some wind. And it was like right after that, they were like, oh, really? Do you want to know what it's really like? Here, let's turn it up to like 11. And it is, I will say, we're definitely in a hurricane now. I'm grateful that we have power. I will say that the internet's holding and we got power. So thank you, all those of you watching over us.
Yes, Claudio Winky.
Hey, what's
hope
up?
I'm pronouncing that right. Says love that timeline perspective.
She's live from Germany right now. Thank you for
Hey,
joining us.
that's
We
cool.
love you.
I always like when other countries tune in and watch. And I had a friend earlier, Irene. She popped in to say hello, and she's in Japan. So there
Nice.
you go.
Oh man, I love it there. Although I've never been. I feel like I had some lives there in Japan. I think I've been the most drawn to there and Italy in this life. And I have not visited either. But it's like it's one of those things when I look at my own past lives and my own journeys, I'm like, whoa, what happened in Japan? What happened in Italy? And then there's the one that everyone's like, what? What happened in Russia? Oh my God. Like I have so much Russian, and I'm not Russian in this life, not at all. But it's like there's this weird thing where I'm like, I understand you in this weird way that I don't even get it. But yeah.
Aurora Diamond Heart says, "Oh no, not a tree."
I'm pretty sure it was. It was a chunk. It was a good tree, a chunk of some. Anyway, it sort of died down. So I think we're okay. Oh man, Claudia's up all night.
4
That's
a.m.
cool,
in the
though.
morning. Wow.
You know what though?
Thank
Every
you for
now and
tuning
then, yeah. Thank you for being up right now. Every now and then, it's exactly what we need. But thank you, Lala. Brian, thanks for hanging out with us.
Yeah, Lala, she is one of my rare guests that has actually been on every one of my shows.
Nice. That's cool. Thanks for being
And
here.
so I'm kind of curious, and I know we're at the hour, and I know we're pushing it, especially.
I am totally good. So whenever you feel a natural ending, either that or our power will stop. But yeah, feel free. Go ahead.
I'm kind of curious your thoughts of the perspective that you have of doing the work that you do. When you get somebody who says, yes, I want to do what you do and learn what you do, and you sit down and try to teach them, and they're like, no, I don't get it. No, I don't understand this. No, I don't see what you're talking about. What do you do in those moments? Have you come across that to where somebody says they want to, but they really don't?
Well, I would say yes. First off, most people probably wouldn't continue. You know what I mean? If they don't really want it, they probably we won't even connect. But for people that we do end up working with, I have encountered this a lot. And I think it was actually one of the problems that I had when I first started doing this work. And I've talked about this a lot in, other places and shows, but I was one of those people that when I started this weird awakening journey, I was so out of my mind. I went to, people to try to get sessions, and not knowing I was supposed to do one on myself, obviously, but I needed to learn how to work with my own energy. But I would go to people and I would do like the YouTube thing, and I would watch everyone and be like, I'm going to do their healing process or whatever it is. And a lot of people, what, they would have these techniques or these like ideas or these things. And, I think I said this on that presentation we did. They were like, make the orb of light around your body, do the column of light, call in Archangel Michael. And, the reality is I was ready and willing to do all those things. It was like, hell yeah, I'm ready. Let's do it. And everything that I did, the techniques that they gave me and the way that they showed me did not work. And I could not understand it. And people are like, just do it like this. And I'm like, well, wait, how, what, when? Do I just think of the thing? Do I just decide that it's real? Do I, you know what I mean? There was these huge gaps that I couldn't put, in the right places. And what I learned was that each and every person has a very particular system through which they will pick up and begin to integrate what we would call non-physical energy or non-physical information. And if you're able to understand a person's learning style, number one, because, we have, readers, we have the kinesthetic, learners, we have, the visual, there's a number of different styles of learning. Number one, if you're able to identify the manner through which a person takes in energy, the way they learn in their own time, for those that take the time to generate rapport and understand how a person works, you're not really going to have a question in terms of how to tailor information that people can receive. What I think at times we will have a difficulty with is unlearning certain things that we have learned. And we've, a lot of us have been taught since the day we were born, this is how this is. And that's what reality is. And that thing over there, that's made up. That's not possible. That's real. You know what I mean? We've all been programmed by a lot of stuff. And I would say that is the greatest obstacle that I encounter with people when we're doing classes or stuff, is that people come in with a program that says, I follow so-and-so, and they said that, you just call in Lord Metatron and, just put Metatron's cube on them, and all of a sudden all your problems go away. And I'm like, dude, if you had any idea who Metatron was, you would never call that energy in. And the very fact that you're literally sitting here telling me that tells me that you really have not done enough research and work into your own energy to understand what that is. And I apologize if you love Lord Metatron. I'm just using that as an example, but some people you will see that a lot. So there's a lot of deprogramming that we'll have to do, but I've also noticed that happens organically for a lot of us as we go through this journey of opening up the energy field. And a lot of people have tremendous mental body energy that's stored up in the upper chakras, which is why a lot of people have a really hard time opening the third eye, perceiving things visually, within the mind's eye. And so if you're able to understand kind of a person's makeup and the way they learn and kind of a little bit about what they've been trying to heal in their life, you will understand the pathways and the energy setters that are open. And what I've just learned over the years is that so far, I was like, I have to check in before I say this thing. So far in all the classes and work that we've done in terms of instruction wise, I don't think that anyone that I've encountered has really had too big of an issue in terms of feeling the energy that we work with. Because one of the things I learned really, really quickly was that if there was one thing that I could do, and it's not me, it's an energy that's created by the two of us. I think that's important to mention. It's a process that's created in unison with that individual, was that we were able to create a very palpable field of energy. I can't say that we always knew what to do with it in the beginning. I can't say that I was like, oh, now we're going to direct it this way. There takes a lot of learning and refinement to figure that out. But I believe that's something that anyone can pick up if you're able to clear the places in the body that hold on to those belief-based blockages. And then secondly, and I will pause after this, maybe it's most important of all, I mean this really, really sincerely, you have to give yourself permission to begin to perceive things differently. You have to really give, it's like your heart and your soul authorization to be like, yes, I understand. I really do have an ability to perceive and work with non-physical energy, even if I don't know how it works or what it looks like, even if the way that so-and-so does it over there doesn't work. I know that I can. And I think one of the ways in which we know it's possible, even if you have great mental blockages or issues in kind of learning how to operate in that place, the very fact that we know it's appropriate is because you had the desire. And they talk about that in the law of one. The only requirement for service is the desire to be of service. And so I always think there's an avenue for everyone, but I'm probably just getting too philosophical here. So,
no, you're good. And what's interesting is while you were saying that, a phrase popped in my mind, and it was a phrase that I was told in a reading once when I asked, what do I need to do to grow? And I would always give my guides a hard time because everything was a riddle to them. And I was like, can't the,
Right?
and then somebody else would sit there and they'll get a yes and no. And I'm like,
Hmm.
why can't I get a yes and no? And they're like, because that's not you. And I'm like,
Yeah.
fine. So I said, so what's the riddle? And they go, your growth will happen when you learn to see with eyes unseen. And I was like, what the hell does that mean? And then I started
Hmm.
realizing, wait a minute, I need to stop looking at everything as concrete in front of me and see beyond and go, what is really going on here?
I
What is,
agree.
and so it's like, now I understand it. And it's like, you're like, you're like the inner child going, yes, you were right. Yes. I needed
Yeah.
that and I get it now. But it's like, sometimes you just wish they would throw you a bone and say, here.
Right. Oh no, this is a very real thing. I just want to say this in my experience. I'm not sure if that's someone knocking on my door or if there's some kind of debris hitting our house, but in my experience, actually here, refresh my train of thought because I got debris flying all around me. What was
I
it
was
again?
saying about seeing with eyes
Oh,
unseen.
yes, thank you. With the guide, the whole guide thing, you will notice for people that do this work, and I've encountered this, maybe you have, there's an effect that occurs where a lot of times for people who will do this work with others, I'll work with a client and I'll be able to, it's like you can slide right in there and it's like you can discern many things and they'll have questions. And I'm not saying it's all true, it's all open to interpretation as we understand, but you'll find that in a lot of cases in doing this work, it's much easier to extract information and guidance for other people. And it's like we as the practitioner almost have to have this handicap that is placed on the body so that it's almost like you don't have this unfair advantage. And maybe I'm making it too much of a human thing in how I'm describing that, but I've encountered that dynamic with people that I do readings for and connect with. It's like we have vast conversations with their energy field, and then I will come into my own issues. And I think this is set up this way to hopefully maximize our efforts at personal growth, where they're like, you don't get an extra cheat code. You don't get this extra, avenue to understand things that everyone else doesn't get. Sure, you can help other people in discerning that, but when it comes to you, you're going to have to do the work, or at least that's how my experience has been. You know what I
Right.
mean? It's like they're like, we'll give you this weird cryptic piece and let's see if you unpack it. And if you do, you'll know. And if you don't, well, guess what? You'll be stuck asking the same question over and over again until you do. And in the meantime, I'll do 100 readings for people and they're like, oh, thanks. I finally know what I'm going to do. And I'm like, can I get one of those at some point? That has
Right.
really happened to me several times during this journey. So it's real.
So Aurora Diamond Heart says it's spirit knocking.
It might have been. I don't know. I don't know what it was, but it's getting wild. I'm glad it's holding
And
together.
you have a message from J. Kelly Silver. She says, praying you stay safe.
Thank you.
And she says, enjoying this conversation so much. Thank you both. Well,
I
thank you.
appreciate it.
And she goes and says, my daughter calls it planet music, where the great musicians come from. She still channels great music and it comes from that place. So I guess she's not totally locked out anymore. No, and I will say, I know the comment says musicians won from, but she sent a correction. So I was reading the
Yeah,
corrected
yeah.
version.
No, I feel you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I don't know if there's time for this, but J. Kelly Silver, if you can just say your daughter's first name, we can maybe we can get a bit of information because it feels like she is plugged into that. And just so you know, there is a whole framework of what we might call pocket realities, wavelength spaces, experiential realms, specifically for the process of creation of sound, creation of light. Sadly, there's also planes for destruction. There's literal planes where this sounds crazy. There's planes of existence where you can encounter the ancient gods of Egypt. They're still living there in literal physical form in many cases. It's a bizarre thing. There you go. I mean, it is a literally real thing. It'll blow your mind, but yeah, that there is like there's a realm in which many of the kind of great creators and masters will kind of lend their knowledge and their creative ability to those of us on the earth plane. And you'll see individuals that come into this body and this life with this uncommon ability to create certain things like music or art or certain things. And I know everyone's known people like that. You're like, where do they get it? Where did that come from? And sometimes it's a thing we come in with and it's ours and ours alone, but for other people at times you're going to tap into realms and connect with things. And anyway, she probably is in that realm. She's probably gone now, but sorry, maybe you shouldn't say your daughter's name.
And I'll just say to J. Kelly Silver, if you're wanting to keep your daughter name off of
I probably shouldn't
public media, you can use a pseudonym or a different name. We'll know it's her through intention.
I'll just be real. I feel like the door opened as soon as I asked. So I'll just say, like, I will softly confirm from a distance perspective that I believe she is connected with that. And just know it's literally real. It's as real as you allow it to be. So anyways, we don't even need the name, but just so you know, it's very, very helpful. I think for in a lot of cases when you want to accurately read a person's energy. And the thing is, you can use a calling card, you can use a surrogate name. It kind of doesn't matter as long as they're holding the intention. But that was a thing I also learned from the law of one as well, and just kind of learning it and sort of picking up the knowledge that came through it. I noticed that they would refer to people as the mind, body, spirit complex known as Michael, not Michael Koff. Mind, body, spirit complex known as Michael. And so when I started doing this work, and I remember asking literally my guides and spirit, like, I don't even know, how am I going to do this? And I was shown in that moment, when you want to connect, it's the mind, body, spirit complex known as blank, and just allow that energy to come forward. I think we might have lost some kind of electrical connection. Hopefully we're still on here. We just had a big glitch. Are we still here?
We're still here. There was no glitch on our end.
I'm shocked. I'm like, whoa. Anyway, that was wild. But yeah.
Real quick, I want to touch on something you mentioned, and it's been in my mind, and I've been trying to figure out how to ask it. And what it was is, you had said you heard the chakras.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
What did that sound like? Was it a music tone, or was it a verbatim sound?
It was a word. Dude, thank you for asking this. I mean this sincerely, because sometimes I feel really dumb and weird talking about this stuff, but it's good for me to go back on it, because honestly, man, it changed my entire life. I feel emotional talking about it sometimes, because I thought I was crazy. I really, really thought I was absolutely insane. And I'm blessed that people came through and were like, no, this is real. Stay there, keep going. But anyway, what happened for me was, honestly, it was about 2 weeks after that lady put her hands on my head, and I just kept going out of the body. And I went to a meditation with that group. It was just a group of old people called Oneness University. And, I went to one of their meditations, and whoa, sorry, we're getting, once again, remind me of my train of thought, where we were going.
You were at the Oneness University hearing the chakras.
Oh yes, thank you. I was hearing the chakras, and the way they came into my body was as a voice, a bell, a tone, and kind of a sparkly color all at the same time, which is very difficult to what? But I'm like, dude, that's literally what it was. But there was a word. And so what I understood at that moment was that my body was defining the chakras through Sanskrit. And what I found was that as I would focus on a place in my body and just kind of somehow focus myself inward, I could focus on a certain part of the body. And I remember specifically it happened, the strongest time it ever occurred was when I went to the third eye in just one of those meditations we were doing. And it was like right as we went up to the third eye in this meditation, I saw and heard and felt this sound. And it was like a number of voices all together at the same time. And it sounds so dumb, but they were all, and they would sing it. It was like this singing thing, but it wasn't at the same time. It's so hard to say it, but it was like they would say the name of the chakra and you would experience it as a layer passing through it. I wish I could remember all the names in that moment. I remember the Agni, I remember the Anahata, and they would do the heart. And then I remember other places where I could feel it, see it. And anyway, it was beyond anything that I had encountered at that stage. I'm grateful that did integrate after a while, which that will happen to people that go through these crazy heightened states of activation. For most of us, it doesn't stay. It's like a wave that passes through, and then your body starts to release some of it. We integrate some of it. And so for me, what it ended up becoming later, now how it shows up is, it sounds crazy and dumb, but I can hear it in the voice. I can just look at people's eyes, and you know what I mean? You can hear honestly, the voice is the easiest one for me. I can hear a fraction of a person's voice for maybe 5 seconds. And it's not even like a boastful thing, because I promise you, anyone can do this. Just not that many people really devote themselves to sitting with it and really going for it. But you can hear a person's voice for maybe 5 seconds and know exactly what's going on within their energy body. It's not that you're going to know everything, exactly what needs to be healed, but it's like looking at a page in a book. You might not be able to read the whole page, but you're going to be able to go, okay, we got a few pieces, and you'll continue to return to it and get more data. But the voice carries the most of it for me, I've noticed.
Yeah.
So
It's kind of like in Reiki where we call it scanning, doing a scan.
yeah, definitely. Very, very much. I actually worked with Reiki for a little while, but I have to be honest, I did not go back to the final session. And I somehow felt restricted by it. But I think it was the teacher that I had, honestly, because I had
Yeah.
incredible Reiki treatments, but it was very restrictive. It was very power based. It was very hierarchical. And I think I had we were talking about ego earlier. I think I had a way more ego issues at that stage. And I was like, no, I don't care. I want to do it this way, which actually really, really helped me, because this is a thing that I honestly want to pass on before we go. And sorry to keep going on and on here, but I believe that one of the greatest things we can do for those of us that continue to work with energetic healing modalities is at a certain stage, break the rules, change things, do it your way, create your modality, understand and decide what works for you, and throw every single thing out that doesn't. It doesn't mean you won't edit and change it later, because we have to. No self-respecting, legitimate energetic practitioner is not editing their techniques and learning new things. But what you'll find is that there's a completely different level of ownership that happens when you start to do it your way and only your way. And man, if I didn't know better, it sounds like there's water running in this room even, but wow. But yeah.
And to validate what you were just saying, when I got my Reiki mastership and Reiki 3 level, my instructor, who I am so blessed I met, Neil, was such a great teacher and mentor. He literally told us, okay, now that you're at the master level, go create it your own way.
Yep.
And it was like, literally, that was his advice. He's like, now that you're at the master level, make it your own. Go do it your way. And
I
it's
very,
like,
very much agree with that. Yeah, absolutely. That's how for a lot of us, that's when everything changes. So it definitely was for me. Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, Jake Kelly Silver says, I have so many questions about Metatron.
I can just give you a little bit of it before we go. I believe that Metatron is, first of all, a very, very real being. It's, one of, if you want to call it, an archangel, but I actually don't really, I guess I should say this. I do not align or work with any archangel energy whatsoever. One of the things that I've learned through my own experiences And I might be wrong. I always leave room for this. One of the most foolish things you can do as a psychic or a practitioner of spirit is say, this is how it always is. But my experiences with archangels have not been the ones that people talk about in our, social group. In fact, what I've discerned is that the archangel energies that often show up in a myriad of sessions are in many cases imposter energies. They're not necessarily evil. Don't make that mistake of thinking that every single imposter spirit that calls itself Archangel Michael is a demonic being or something negative. In fact, many of them are not. For those that really observe the frequency of archangels, you'll understand that they're also a collective. And so it's the same thing with the 72 Goetian demons. There's an equal aspect of dark and light. And the reality is, in many cases, they are one and the same, but we're looking at different polarity aspects of those beings. And so one of the things that I was shown very early on was that there was never a need for me to connect with any of them. And I noticed that a few years back, there was a big trend of people connecting with this Archangel Metatron, and I was able to perceive it. And from what I was able to perceive, the presence of Archangel Metatron returning to the Earth plane around 2017 or so was an appendage of what we would call an ancient artificial intelligence that inserts itself into the framework of consciousness as every race goes through paths of evolution. Inevitably, this ancient artificial intelligence will come in and begin to take the place of certain energies. And so for me, what I was shown very early on was that Archangel Metatron was part of an AI framework that ultimately it's not even an evil thing. I'm not saying it's evil. Because it's not really. It's not like a good versus bad thing. It's just, I don't believe that it's necessarily resonant with organic life. I believe it's a system that copies things and possesses energy and then kind of feeds it back to you in an experiential way. And anyway, sorry to rant on the archangel thing. I could talk about it forever, but
Sounds like AI.
Wild. No, that's my understanding. And yet here's the thing. At the same time, I did actually encounter an archangel very, very early on in the journey that chose to show itself to me. That was Archangel Raziel, which it's crazy because some people are like, that guy is evil. And I'm like, what? When it came to me, it was anything but. And it was actually a keeper of knowledge. That's literally what it explained. I am a keeper of knowledge. And I was like, okay, there was no polarity, there was no good or evil, right or wrong, but it hit me so hard. It was like my body shook and I sat there with tears streaming down my face, like just rocking back and forth for just wild amount of time. And anyway, not to go on and on here, but
what I find interesting, to kind of piggyback on what you're saying with the archangels, is when I use archangel energy for something, I don't call on the archangels. I call up and I'm like, hey, Michael, can we do this? Hey, Raph, can we do this? Or, it's like I just call them by name, and it's like it's known and I can feel them. And people like always laugh when they're going, who's Raph? I'm like, Raphael. They're like, you call him Raph? I'm like, why not? He's a guy, It's like I treat him like any other person. And it's like, and I'm wondering if that's the difference, like, of what you're saying with the energies, is the AI is like, I am Archangel so and so. It doesn't have that personal connection of just saying, hey, I'm Michael. I'm here to help. What do you need? You got my attention. Not, oh, here is this construct and I'm here for this and this is how I operate.
Honestly, to me, that is a sign that says you have cultivated an appropriate relationship with those energies, because you do not see them as a deity to be worshipped. You do not see them as this all powerful, like, please, Lord Metatron, come upon me, bring you know what I mean? It's not this like, save my soul. It's like, I understand that we're part of a network of non-physical beings that in their authentic form, in many cases, will choose to lend healing and aid to those on earth. And so please don't anyone out there confuse the idea that I'm saying they're evil and, oh, you should never do that. I personally don't. not sure I even understand the reason for that, because what I was shown is they have agendas, and I'm not saying that in your experience they don't. I think that if you cultivate a proper relationship with those, it won't be a factor. But for me, I'll be honest, I don't call in any beings to any sessions other than the ones that are native to you, what we call the network of aids or guides that connect with us in the higher self. And I'm not one of those people that's like all you ever need, because you're going to get a lot of people that are like, this is all you have to do. You just have to do it this way. I don't necessarily, believe that wholeheartedly. But what I have noticed is that each and every person will have a very particular, fully formed network of spiritual beings that are working with them, attached to them. I'll be real, they're not always good. That's one of the things about spirit guides that I think doesn't really get talked about a lot. You can have guides with you through your entire human journey that have agendas just like humans do. You know what I mean? And it's like a lot of times we get this idea that like my spirit guides, they're always going to help me. There are rules that bind them to certain actions on the earth plane. It's one of the agreements that we make when you don't incarnate in a physical body and choose to interact with the third density plane. So there's definitely rules, but it's important to know that they come in with their own issues as well. And I've just noticed that in the work that I do, I've received, I think, greater connection, and I would say specifics about, not, I guess I'm getting oddly specifics about energetic anatomy from people's guides, because for me that's kind of more the direction in which, or I would say the framework in which I operate in the work that I do. It is almost entirely about energetic anatomy and the clearing of energies within those, rather than what might be on other timelines. And anyway, that's probably an even bigger conversation for another time, but they're
Well,
certainly viable.
yeah, and what's interesting is every time I think of Metatron, two images come to mind. Is the angel that's in a cloak, and when he reveals himself, he removes the cloak and comes out of the darkness into the light, or vice versa. So he's the one that travels between both. But the other one is I will often, and I don't know if this is programming or something in my mind, but Metatron and Megatron,
I
I will
know,
get
right?
those in
Right?
my
I know,
mind.
right? Totally. I wonder if there, some kind of a unintentional like relationship there. But yeah, no, totally. It does. I wouldn't dissuade anyone from really connecting with it. I think that's part of the learning journey for everyone. I think that just because some guy shows up on a challenge like I never do this or I never do that, you're gonna find every single spiritual healer or whoa, or intuitive is gonna have their own set of hard and fast rules and belief systems that we either adhere to or don't. And I think that's just the method and the way in which I've learned to operate. But I'll just tell you this, and then I'll kind of stop ranting here. I think one of the most important things we can do is remember that in many cases we will learn just enough to know that we know nothing at all. It's like that you're barely scratching the surface of what is real, and ultimately in the end, and I say this as a hope, not always as a deed that I'm able to accomplish, but I think one of the most important things we can do as, spiritual practitioners, remain right-sized within the ego. Do not fall prey to self-importance. In fact, I believe self-importance is the absolute enemy of the true mystic, of the true shaman. The more we hold on to that, the less access to real truth we will have. And so,
Yeah.
anyway,
And one thing I've learned that will sum that up maybe easier, in my opinion, is the more I learn what I know, the more I learn what I don't know. And
right.
the more that I learn I didn't know, I didn't know.
Yeah, I feel you, man. Yeah, it's
So
all
we
going
had a
on.
couple comments come in the chat room. Marilyn Bradley
Hey, what's
said,
up?
love the close familiar style with the archangels. Yeah.
I do
And
too. That feels like a good way you're doing it. Seriously.
yeah. And J. Kelly Silver said, Aya,
Oh, there
or
you go. Hey,
Ella,
Ella, nice, nice.
is my daughter. And she goes, she's 17 now. I spoke to you a couple weeks ago, Julia in Savannah. And she said her last name is not the same as mine. She's public anyway, performs publicly with her dad. And she says, your composure during the storm is amazing.
Thanks. I'll just say one thing. Take this with a grain of salt, J. Kelly Silver. Ella has done this music routine many, 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 many times. As soon as, even if that's not her real, it doesn't matter. Like the energy comes through. This is a very, very learned being, and so I honestly, I think it's awesome. That's a great a it's just an amazing ability and gift to come in with. I spent a tremendous amount of my life playing music. I don't play it so much anymore, but I totally understand. There's like this weird thing that'll kick in, and I don't know, you just sort of like become it in a way. And anyway, I think she has that, but it's cool.
It's very cool. And I think this is a good spot to say here's part one, and we'll definitely have you back on for another episode.
Yeah. Thank you. Totally. I appreciate it.
Yes, and if you want to get a hold of Matthew, his information is in the description, links to find him. Do you have a preferred method of connection?
I would say if you really want to make sure that I actually read your message and your email, just go down to the contact page at rememberyourmission.com. All you got to do is scroll down to the bottom of the page there, and you can send me an email. I do see those. I read every single one. If people write to me on Facebook, it might be a week or so before I ever see it. And I'm going to be real. Facebook is just not, I have a weird brain fog with Facebook Messenger. And so don't be upset if you guys are messaging me on Facebook and I don't ever read it. It's just I glitch out on it. I can't do Telegram either. I think I'm too like Generation X still. I'm like stuck in this weird like Luddite framework where I'm like, I can't really do internet, yet I use it all day and I can only operate in one, format. But so I'm getting better at it, but which you'll also see with people. You will see that with people that do the work that I do. Unfortunately, it lends itself to some mild dissociation from normal human practices. You start to become like, wait, what? I'm trying. So anyway, but yeah, find me at rememberyourmission.com, which is, it's where you can book a session, anything. So we also have classes up there as well, but yeah.
Very cool. And real quick, J. Kelly Silver says, does Matthew have synesthesia? I'm not even gonna
That's a good question. I don't think that I do. That's where you experiences your senses in a very, very different way. Sounds will have color, colors will have taste, the senses get mixed. I have experienced synesthesia, I think, during the early stages when I was going through just crazy dissociative awakening. But I wouldn't really consider myself that now. I don't think so. But I think most people can experience that, under the influence of plant medicines. It's very, very common. And but yeah, I know a lot of people are born with it these days. I think that's part of that new like starseed generation. You know what I mean? They're born with a whole different set of abilities. It's very real. So
right. And I'm kind of laughing because I thought she was talking about somebody else and didn't even put together two and two of your name is Matthew and she's asking you. I
it's
thought it
okay.
was
Yeah.
somebody else. And then when
Okay.
you said, well, I did, and I was like, oh, you. Oh, then I'm really glad I put that question up.
Yeah. Man, it's all good. I've been losing my train of thought every 5 seconds. We have a sea of debris flying, but I would say we are definitely in a category 3 or 4 in this moment. It's probably not showing up on the mic, but my lord, it's crazy. So thank you for your well wishes. We feel pretty safe. The building's not shaking. There's just lots of trees flying by. So
Well,
we're
good.
all
And
good.
hopefully it stays that way. And Claudia says, great take on the ego trap. Awesome show. Thank you both.
Thanks, Claudia. We love you.
Yes. And with that, I'm going to say thank you to Matthew for coming on. And fortunately, we were able to hold during the storm and had a couple of glitches, but with what's going on, I'm thinking that is totally cool that that's all we
I'm
had. And
shocked,
so
right? Yeah.
one thing I would like to ask as we close the show is I get a lot of feedback from people as they love when I ask this question because they love the answers is from your life's experience. It doesn't have to be from the 8 years. It can be from anywhere. What is a golden nugget you want to leave the audience with?
You came here with a mission, and it is time to remember.
All right. I love it. And so, to everyone out there, thank you to everyone in the chat room. Thank you to everyone who's watching this. Wherever you are in the world, make it a wonderful day, afternoon, evening. And if you're asleep, wake up and find yourself drawn to watch this episode. And make every day filled with love and joy. And as Matthew beautifully said, follow your mission. Don't let anyone tell you can't do something, because my favorite way to look at it is look at the word impossible.
Mm-hmm.
It actually says I'm possible. So just look at your perspective on things.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. It's an honor. Thank you for having me here.
Yes, and I am honored to have you on and look forward to more episodes.
We shall do it again. Thanks, guys.
Thank you.
Oh,
And
it's down to
Clyde,
cat too. There we go. Thank you.
well, there you go. We took it from a Cav 4 to a Cat 2.
Way to go, guys. Excellent storm and dissolution abilities.
So thank you to everyone, and I am going to call it and say good night, everyone.
Night, guys. Thank you.